All right, guys, we are live. I'll give folks a minute to filter in here. So I wanted to hop on first and put this QR code here for the Storm Cancer 5K, which is only about 2 months away. We're still looking for sponsors, and if anybody wants to contribute raffle baskets, scan that QR code. You can go to their website and get some more information about that. We'd love to see many of you, especially if you're local, come out and participate in the Storm Cancer 5K. We'll be there, our whole team will be there, many of which will be participating. And so you can scan the QR code, run, walk, bring the family. We would love to see you out there at that event to raise money for pediatric brain cancer research. Guys, with that being said, let's get into the forecast here for this major storm system that's ramping up right now across the central part of the country. Well, you can see all of the watches and the warnings that are in effect here from parts of Texas down through the Central Plains into parts of the Chicago metro area. All these pink colors that you see right now, guys, this is for red flag warnings. And so if we click around here, red flag warnings, because of how low the humidity is right now, the wind gusts, the warm temperatures, any kind of fire that would spark this afternoon would have the potential to spread rapidly in this region. And then we look down to the south, we also have, guys, high wind warnings, and actually in the panhandle of Texas here, I saw earlier, there it is, blowing dust warning. There was a major dust storm that rolled through northern parts of Texas this morning, still having issues with dust down there. And this is just the western side of the storm. Of course, we're going to have to watch for these storms that are initially starting to fire off here in parts of Missouri and eastern Kansas. They will work eastward as we work over the next several hours, and especially as we work into tonight. Now, this is kind of the first initial line. It's not going to be the main one. There's going to be more development as we work further into the evening and especially into the overnight hours, and I'm seeing some concerning trends regarding tornado risk across parts of Missouri, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, and into northern parts of Arkansas. For us here in central Indiana, and I'll get to the forecast in more details here in a moment, I still think wind is probably going to be our biggest risk because of when the storms come through, which will be overnight tonight. Regardless, it's going to be breezy this afternoon, going to be very breezy tomorrow. We will have more rain and storm threats that we'll need to look at for tomorrow afternoon as well. And so let's zoom in here. Let's take a look at these storms initially firing off. Right now, no warnings on these guys. Overall, they're relatively tame, but it's as we work further into the afternoon and into the evening hours that we're going to deal with these bigger threats developing. Let's take a look at the latest threat map. This is a threat map on a scale of 1 to 5, the dark green being a marginal risk or a 1 out of a 5 risk, the yellow area being a slight risk or a 2 out of a 5 risk in terms of severe weather potential, orange area 3 out of a 5, and then look how big this red moderate risk area is now, a 4 on a scale of 5 in terms of severe weather threat levels. Now, it's a little bit different than the map that we put out earlier today, which was focusing more on whether severe weather was just likely or not, kind of giving you a better idea of how widespread this would be. This is giving us a little bit more of an idea of how intense the severe weather could be as we work into the afternoon, and certainly also how widespread. And so it's kind of a mixture of them. And so if we take a look here, we've got a moderate risk, a scale or a 4 on a scale of 5 from Des Moines, Iowa, down through St. Louis and Jefferson City, down through parts of western Tennessee, Paducah as well, Memphis, guys. And so this entire area, I think, has the highest potential for severe weather with multiple modes of severe weather on the table. If we go back here, let me close that down real quick. Here we go, guys. So if we go to the tornado risk map, let's start here. We go to the tornado risk map, we can click around, we can see 15%. Well, what does 15% mean? 15% means that there's a 15% probability of a tornado within 25 miles of any location in this red hatched area. I'm also concerned, especially the southern half of this red hatched area, for a couple of significant, potentially long track tornadoes. So EF2 plus tornadoes possible, I would say, especially for the southeastern quadrant of Missouri, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, and northeast parts of Arkansas. This yellow hatched area, that is a 10% risk, guys. So a 10% risk of tornadoes within 25 miles of any location. The hatched risk here indicates that there could be a couple of EF2 plus tornadoes. Now note how this risk decreases as it works further off to the east. It means that if you are situated within one of the brown or the green colors here, guys, it means that the tornado threat will likely be more isolated in nature, not as widespread. Wind, though, we need to keep an eye on. If we pull this up here and we look at our wind threat, guys, you can see that we have a significant area of a 45% hatched area for wind damage. That means there's a 45% chance within 25 miles of any location that there will be wind damage. And I am concerned that if you're in this pink area, there could be some wind gusts of 70 to locally 80 plus mile per hour winds with storms as they arrive this evening. Note again, it weakens as it works further off to the east, but this threat a little bit further east than the tornado threat. You can see the red area, that's a 30%. The yellow area is going to be 15%. Brown going to be 5%. And so guys, you know, if you look close down into central Indiana, and I'll zoom in here into central Indiana, you can see that the wind threat does extend a little bit further east. This hatched risk means there could be the risk of maybe some significant winds. And so for central Indiana, I know a lot of you are wondering, wind I think is a much higher threat than tornadoes. Could there be an isolated tornado? That's possible. I just don't think it's as big of a risk because the line of storms will be weakening as it pushes further to the east. But if you're in the St. Louis metro area, all modes of severe weather on the table, potentially significant wind damage, and perhaps a couple of strong tornadoes in the area as well. Now, if we go over to the simulated radar here, guys, as we go through the rest of this afternoon and rest of this evening, let's zoom in here. We can see the main line of storms beginning to fire off here across parts of western Missouri, parts of northern Missouri, eastern Nebraska. As we kind of go through here, guys, what you're going to notice is the line of storms intensifying as it works into central parts of Missouri. Note, guys, note some of the supercell thunderstorms developing down here. My big concern in this area and then further north into the east, kind of in this region here, is that there is not a lot of precipitation south of these storms, which means you're going to have what we call unimpeded flow, which means it can actually enhance rotation and lead to some longer track tornado risk. We saw something similar if you think back to December, I think it was maybe a December of 21 with the Maysville tornado. I'm not saying it's a repeat of that, or Maryville, gosh, my names are bad here. But regardless, that tornado that went through southeastern Missouri, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, through this region in here, if you remember back to that storm system, I see a little bit of a similarity in terms of these storms working through here. And so as we continue to go along here, guys, you can see that these storms continue to push off to the east. This is by the time we work to about 8 or 9 o'clock. I wouldn't be shocked if this line sped up a little bit. Something to keep in mind there. Wouldn't be shocked if that line sped up a little bit. But it's working through the St. Louis area at that point. As we work towards about 11 p.m., and 12 a.m., you can see storms working into Illinois. Still have supercells ongoing across Missouri, down across northern parts of Arkansas, guys. In terms of the Indianapolis metro area, let's continue on into the overnight hours. You can see that these storms will be weakening a little bit. Note how they get a little bit more disorganized. This is all the way out through about 1 or 2 a.m. Let's say if we speed this up an hour or two. Still at the state line. Now, I do think at this point, you know, if you're in Terre Haute, if you're near Evansville, if you're towards Lafayette, we could be dealing with some severe storms in the form especially of wind. Could there be an isolated tornado? I think that's possible, especially in southwestern Indiana, in this area in here. But I do think wind will be the biggest threat at this point. As we continue to go along, note again how the activity shrinks. Note how it weakens a little bit. That's good news for us here in central Indiana. I think that storms will be weakening. You can see them here, and I'll move the radar over so it's a little bit easier to see. You can just tell how it's not as lit up. It's not as intense at this point. It will be weakening, so instead of 70 to 80 mile per hour winds, maybe 60 mile per hour winds. I just don't see it as extreme of a threat as it will be to the west. So that's kind of where we're at right now. That's as of about, let's say, 3 a.m. if we speed it up a couple of hours. And then you can see fizzling out by the time we work into the morning hours about 8 or 9 o'clock. So I'm going to look at a couple of comments here for a second, and then I'll get into tomorrow's forecast and our updated threat map as well. So I'll look at a couple of comments and see if I can help answer any potential questions here. So let's see here. Yes, more than happy to help, guys. By the way, in the top left, you'll note the 811 DIG logo. We're continuing to support that initiative to make sure that after the storm passes, especially if there's wind damage and power lines down, and you've got damage around your property, that you are calling 811 DIG to make sure that there's no gas lines where you're planning on digging, repairing a fence, repairing a gazebo, whatever the case may be. Want to be sure that we're being safe with that, and making sure that we are being smart before we dig, and so continuing to work with them on that. Do you think we will see significant long track tornadoes in southern Indiana? I do not. I don't think that we'll see significant violent long track tornadoes in southern Indiana. I think wind is a greater concern, and instead of 70 to 80 mile per hour winds, I think we're looking more at 60 mile per hour winds. And we can pull up here. I want to show you all something that will maybe give you a little bit of a visual on the tornado threat. If we look at what we call updraft helicity, and I put out a reel about this a little while ago, if we look at what we call updraft helicity, guys, this is basically giving us an idea of storms that have a lot of upward motion and that are also producing a lot of spin and rotation in the atmosphere. And you can kind of see where the core of that is across southern Missouri towards the St. Louis metro area. That's, again, one bigger city I'm very concerned about, into parts of southern and central Illinois. But note how it weakens as it pushes towards Indiana. I think that could there be some isolated tornadoes in here? Western Indiana, Terre Haute, Lafayette, Evansville? Perhaps. But the signal does weaken as it pushes further to the east. And so certainly something to keep in mind there. This is where I'm most concerned about those longer track tornadoes. So that's a great question, and I'm happy to hopefully ease some minds in terms of that across our area. All right. Ben, I appreciate your question. I'm not going to be able to look at specific zip codes right now, but I do appreciate that. Where's the best chance for discrete supercells? It's going to be in this area that you see with the colors, the tracks, the helicity tracks in here. You can see further down to the south, Mississippi here, guys, northern Alabama, western Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana. There could be a couple of supercells down here as well, but it's more isolated in nature. And so we've added to the risk area down here because of a couple of stronger storms, but I do think that it's more isolated in nature rather than widespread like it will be up here. So that is something to keep in mind as well. Guys, with all that being said, here's a look at kind of our threat map. I don't have any changes from what we had this morning. I don't have any changes. I still think that this is the most significant severe weather area: southeast Iowa, central and southern Illinois, Missouri, far western Kentucky, far western Tennessee, far southwest Indiana near Evansville. This area you can see in the top right, and I'll take the QR code off so you can see all of it here. We do that. This is where, maybe, come on now. Don't fight with me. Don't fight with me. Don't you all love technology sometimes? Sometimes it just doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. There we go. Okay. So this breaks it down to the best that I can for everyone all in one spot. The area that's in the highly likely 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts possible with the strongest storms as we work into this evening and into tonight. The orange area, that's where we start to see the storms to weaken, could still see some gusts up to 70 miles per hour, a couple of tornadoes perhaps, and large hail. Once the storms work towards Indy, Columbus, Seymour, Louisville, E-Town down in Kentucky, South Bend, a few severe storms are possible, but it's not going to be as widespread. Could see some gusts up to 60 miles per hour, maybe an isolated tornado, but I don't think that's a huge risk. Maybe some isolated instances of large hail as well. Once you get into the green area, the low end risk, I think severe storms in general are unlikely. Could still see some stronger gusts, some small hail, but I don't really see a big risk through the overnight hours for severe weather in that green area. Now, however, if I go back to the simulated radar, we do have another threat tomorrow that I want to look at. So I'll let this load in here for a second, guys, and we will look at the threat as we work into tomorrow afternoon. And so we'll have a nice little lull. We'll have a nice lull in the activity. I'll zoom out here. We'll be ramping things up early tomorrow afternoon across the deep south. Already some supercell signals trying to develop here down across parts of Alabama. In terms of the Ohio Valley, you can see not much going on at this point. That changes as we work further into the afternoon. You can start to see things really get organized down to the south. We do still have a decent environment in place, I would say. And I do think that there's the potential that a couple of these storms here could be severe. Now, I still think wind will be the biggest threat with some of these storms. I also think some very heavy rain possible, maybe some localized flash flooding here across parts of Kentucky. But I still think that your main severe risk is down here. I think probably a pretty gnarly line of severe storms with wind down across Tennessee, Nashville area, down towards Huntsville, Alabama. And then further down to the south, supercell storms. Again, increasingly concerned about some violent tornadoes down here. How many there are, I still think there are a couple of forecast details to sort out, but the environment is conducive down here across Mississippi, across Alabama, maybe even Louisiana for supercells and a tornado risk. So this is by the time we work towards 5 tomorrow, so a little bit earlier tomorrow than today. Let's zoom back out. Gosh, look at those supercells down here across Alabama. Certainly concerned for this area tomorrow. There's a lot of festivities going on this weekend. St. Patrick's Day, we've got March Madness ramping up, conference tournaments. And so please be on the lookout if you have plans tomorrow across the deep south, because I do think there's a pretty gnarly severe weather setup tomorrow. In terms of areas to the north, again, maybe a couple of embedded storms, but it's not the worst severe weather setup that I've ever seen. Again, a couple of stronger to severe storms in here, but for the most part, it's messier. Will be rainy, though, as we go throughout the evening, 6, 7, 8 o'clock. And then as we work further into the overnight, guys, you can see that the main activity starts to push off to the east. We've got a lot of rain and storms across Kentucky, and still supercells and severe weather ongoing down here across parts of Alabama. And so, you know, it's a pretty big, impactful storm system that we're going to deal with here over the next couple of days. Guys, real quick, before I get into that day 2 outlook, I want to highlight our friends here at Bright Excavating. They actually, if you're worried about storms, I know there's a lot of, I'm not from central Indiana, I'm from southern Indiana. I didn't realize how many houses up here didn't have basements, really, until I moved up here. I always grew up with a basement. I was blessed to have one when we had storms, but I now realize that not everybody has a basement. I don't have a basement. And so Bright Excavating is actually building storm shelters. And you can get up to $500 off an installation of a storm shelter with Bright Excavating. I will throw up here a caption with their phone number. You can call them for this deal, 765-341-4519, Bright Excavating. Here's a look at what their storm shelters look like. And so, you know, if you're in the market for this, you don't have a basement like we do. You know, we don't have a basement, and would certainly be nice to have a safe place to go, because I do still think this could be one of the most impactful severe weather seasons across the United States as a whole that we've had over the past 15 to 20 years. I still see a lot of similarities to 2011, which is concerning because that was the most active severe weather season since 2000. And so Certainly something to keep in mind there. Here's a look at our day 2 severe weather outlook. This highly likely area in terms of severe weather, Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, down towards parts of Mississippi, Oxford, and Jackson, all dealing with some severe weather as well. If I kind of scroll down here, you can see the threat. Green, if you're in the green area, scattered strong storms with wind gusts of 35 to 55 miles per hour. I do think that if you're in the yellow area, you're going to see storms, you're going to see rain, but I think that the severe activity is a little bit more scattered. Maybe some wind gusts to the severe criteria, some hail of more than an inch, isolated tornado perhaps, with the secondary threat in this orange area where we could see some gusts of up to 70 miles per hour and perhaps multiple tornadoes. And that does include Lexington, that does include Louisville, but in terms of central Indiana, you're more in kind of this secondary threat level. It's possible, it's probably not going to be all that widespread. And so, guys, I'll continue to answer some questions here if you all have them. Let's see here. Through central Indiana, are we looking at a high possibility of winds taking out trees and power lines? I think in a sporadic nature, that's possible. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be widespread in central Indiana. Kate says, and Kate, by the way, Kate is really who we're doing the 5K for. So Kate and Zach lost their daughter to childhood pediatric brain cancer a couple of years ago, and so the 5K is in their daughter's memory, Addie, and we would love, again, for you all to participate in the Storm Cancer 5K this upcoming year. But Kate says, clarity alerts are on. Yes, be sure you have your clarity alerts on. We were able to prepare for Helene accordingly, which made for an easier cleanup on the farm. Thanks for all that you do. Kate, thank you for all that you do. Can't wait to work with you again with the Storm Cancer 5K this year. And again, if you want to participate, scan the QR code or just Google Storm Cancer 5K. If you want to sponsor, you can even email me, brett@bamwx.com. More than happy to help, or some raffle baskets as well. We can collect some of those. Let's see here, guys. What other questions do we have? So glad I found your work last year. I'm a tad west of St. Louis and support the good old BAM weather. Thank you. We greatly appreciate that. What time for Central Alabama tomorrow? If we go back to our simulated radar here, guys. Oh, and by the way, real quick, there's a look at the helicity tracks for tomorrow. So you can also see where some of the greatest tornado threats will be tomorrow. You can see some of those longer track storms in there. But in terms of the sim radar for Central Alabama tomorrow, I would say that you're looking at mid-afternoon especially, from 3 to 11 p.m. is probably, it starts at 3 and doesn't exit until 11 or midnight. Good question. Let's see here. St. Louis area. St. Louis, you are in one of the worst spots in terms of severe weather today. 70 to 80 mile per hour winds with the severe wind gusts as we work into this afternoon and this evening, and also a couple of strong tornadoes in that area as well. Here's a look at the current radar, by the way. You can see these initial storms fizzling a little bit. Somebody asked what a derecho is. This wouldn't qualify, I don't think, as a derecho because it has to go a certain distance. But a derecho is a long track. I think it has to go 400 miles, if I'm remembering correctly. 400 miles of 58 mile per hour winds or greater. And so it's a long track damaging line of storms, most common in the summertime. Muncie, in terms of Muncie, guys, storms are going to be weakening as they approach your area. And so if we go back up here to Indiana, look at the simulated radar, storms are going to be coming in overnight. So this is probably 2, 3 a.m. As we continue to go through, you can see storms arriving to Muncie pre-dawn hours, early morning hours tomorrow morning. Storms are weakening, maybe an isolated strong wind gust, but I don't think it's a big deal for the Muncie area right now. Bloomington, Indiana, 60 mile per hour wind gusts, isolated tornadoes. I would say that is probably a good call right now. Again, I don't think it's as widespread by the time it gets to Bloomington, but still worth keeping an eye on things in the overnight hours. All right, guys. Guys, I am going to go ahead and hop off here for now. Again, want to be able to give one more shout out to our sponsor, 811 DIG, working with CenterPoint Energy with that initiative to make sure that people are prepared as these severe line of storms come through as we go throughout this spring. And so, you know, something to keep in mind too is when debris is flying around, whether it's straight line winds or a tornado, gas meters can get damaged, can cause gas leak from falling debris. And so be sure to call your local gas company from a safe location if you suspect a gas leak. They'll respond right away. And of course, if you're going out and about trying to fix things after a storm rolls through, just avoid making a bad situation worse. Use the free 811 service to really anywhere in your state. Every state has one, to know where buried utilities are before you start any outdoor repairs. Again, I am certainly one to go right outside after the storm and figure out what happened, what's wrong, what can I fix. So be sure, if you're somebody like me and you like to do that, call 811 DIG to make sure that you are safe before you start digging up your yard trying to fix things. So guys, I really appreciate you all for hopping on. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back once storms start to fire off, probably across Missouri. We'll probably hop on for a live stream. And then if tornadoes are continuing to track into Indiana overnight, we've got a team here that will be here 24/7 over the next couple of days to make sure that clients are safe, to make sure that you are safe. And if we need to come back on for Indiana overnight, I'll have John give me a call to wake me up, and we will do that. Maybe I'll bring on Willow the weather baby if she's awake as well in the middle of the night to give you a forecast. So guys, thanks so much for joining. Stay safe and have a great rest of your day.